Good evening, everyone. This is Robert Friend with the District Communications team. We are going to begin tonight's final and third webinar of the Marketing Communications Fall 2019 webinar series. This webinar is entitled Developing the Club Communication Plan. I'm thrilled to have everyone here. I know that people are still coming on. So please wait a couple more seconds before I jump in just to allow everyone to get settled. Again, as a housekeeping item, please mute your microphone up in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, just so that any feedback doesn't disturb the flow. As you know, we're recording this whole session for prosperity, as they say. So we'll wait a couple more seconds as we allow everyone to come in. I hope that many of you have had a chance to either participate in previous sessions or have had a chance to open up recordings of the past two sessions, because they all relate. There is a strategy to how we put this together, and there's a reason why this one happens to be last, because it's the culminating discussion around marketing and communications that we want to drive forward with as we move into the new year. So again, if you have your microphone on, please turn it off or mute it, and we will proceed in a moment. Looks like we have a good group tonight. All right, I'm going to begin. So welcome everyone once again. This is webinar number 3 of the District Communications Team's program for this fall, the Fall 2019 webinar series entitled Developing the Club Communications Plan. My name is Robert Friend. I'm the chair of the committee, and I'm going to be leading tonight's webinar focusing on this area. A couple of things I want to go through that are real important as we proceed forward. The first thing is, I just want to remind everyone that this is all about a mission that we've set for ourselves regarding the operation of the marketing communications team. We are here as a service center to the entire district because we think that what we're doing here is all about enhancing everything that we do to help us become more successful in achieving all of the things that each of our clubs is attempting to be successful at, which is increase the value of existing Rotarians' experience and really engage them in a strong way. Also create growth around membership and retention, and of course, very, very important to the foundation work that Colin Gershon, our district foundation chair, is running, and that is increasing foundation giving and global philanthropy. Just to give you kind of a sense, our team is made up of a really terrific group of individuals. They're all listed here, and some of them will be participating in tonight's discussion. I do want to go over some ground plans for tonight that are important. The first one is, hold on one second. There we go. The first one is we are recording this webinar, and that's real important. The second item is that we have a tremendous amount of information in the chat side of the system. So if you go there, don't do anything with it yet, but I've downloaded 10 documents that I'm going to ask you to download a certain time during the course of the hour-long webinar. So please do be aware of that. If you have questions, chat them there, and at the end of the session, we'll jump into those questions and get them going. The next item is, this is something that we say every webinar, but tonight is going to be highly technical. The first session with Jonathan Zaromsky, when we talked about social media and retargeting our audiences through social, that was technical, but from a hands-on perspective. This too will be hands-on, but it's technical from a strategy standpoint. So be aware that that's coming into play here. And I ask you that you be patient as we walk through this and trust the process, because we know that this is something that can be powerful for this district. Again, it's a numbers game. So everything that we're doing, if you add it all up, it's kind of like the yardage on a football field. Every time we scratch and grip for those extra yards, it brings us closer to that goal line. And I think that we need to keep that in mind as we do this. There's a value to everything that we're putting in front of you. And then success begins with two very, very important things. And I'm going to reinforce this. Number one, a commitment and engagement from the top. This means the club president and the club leadership of every club in our district. It means the leadership from our district as well. And frankly, the district's been tremendous because this whole activity that we're engaged in began with Trish Pearson when she was district governor 2 years ago. And we are in the third year of that trajectory now in Jack's year as district governor. And we're really pushing forward very, very efficiently to really keep this momentum going. So commitment's real important. Your club engaging with it is important. And then of course, the other thing is having a team that's in action around this. This is really, really mission critical to the success of the process. And then of course, I said this before, but I'll say it again, and I think someone else is I think Trish is gonna touch on this in a moment, and that is avoid overwhelm, because there's a lot here. You're gonna get a lot tonight. And I ask that that you not get overwhelmed, but that you step back, take a deep breath, and engage in bite-sized pieces around it. A lot of this is gonna be very intuitive. So stuff that you already know, stuff that you may already be doing. But we've got to put it in a sequence to let you all take a look at it in terms of the plan itself. And then, of course, have fun, because that's the most important thing. So that said, let me transition to really what is driving this whole thing, and that is the idea of the Rotary journey. We've talked about this in numerous ways, and I just want to reiterate how important the transition and the trajectory is of building a Rotary journey from point to point. That means the initial connection, both internally as Rotarians, how we connect internally to what we do, but also to the community that we're touching and how they connect into us, and how we build up relationships, and how we build up that first time that they connect with us, and how we increase their engagement through repeat engagements with what we do, and how we get each of us as Rotarians or the community to get to that moment of commit where we are literally driving a transformation to complete that point of attack, which is that commitment to Rotary. Trish, do you have anything you want to add here as I go into this? Because I know that you and I talked a little bit about this.
Sure. Thanks, Robert. So I just want to say a couple of things. One is that the folks who are on this call tonight should look at what we're going to present as being sort of a user's guide. Anytime you get a user's guide to anything, you're not expected to absorb it all, you're not expected to memorize it all, and no, there's not going to be a quiz. But it is a resource for you to use as questions come up in your process. And one of the most important things you're going to see tonight is near the end, so I encourage you to stick through the end, where Robert is going to give you a sort of very simple, this is where you start, this is your next step, this is what you should do, in the order that we're recommending that you do it. And so use that as you go forward. The team has taken the time to put together a lot of information for you, and some of it you won't need maybe for 6 months, but it's going to be there. We're going to remind you that it's there, and use it as it fits with your club, but it gives you a recipe for a user's guide for how to get started. So, you know, the best way to get to the end is to take the first step. So that's it.
Thank you, Trish. That's fantastic. So I want to jump into the next slide, and let me stop here, because I took some time over the last several days and I went into my Rotary and I began peeking at our clubs around the district. And what I learned is that about 30% of our clubs have their goals in place, but about 70% are not 100% there. And it asks the question, it bodes the question, how are we as a district, as Rotary clubs, doing with the idea of strategy? So I want to take a moment and talk about strategy, because I think that it's real important. Because I know when you write something down, you're more apt to be successful in achieving that. And if you don't write it down, then you don't know it's there because it's just not there. It's what we don't know, we don't know. And we need to be thinking about where we're heading, because strategy is all about the future of where we're heading, and we're after that thing that's out there. So I want to take a moment and talk about strategy, because strategy is important. And so I break it down this way. It's basically a response to our community through a series of goals and objectives that we might set out, whatever, to seek optimal benefits for our organization through our constituents, to do two things. And the two things are really, really quite simple: building on the strengths that we have, or building up the weaknesses that we see in front of us. So we see that, that's really, really powerful. And if we do that, then the question is, where are we going with it? Well, we're pursuing or we're leveraging the advantages and opportunities that distinguish us in the community. And it allows people to look at us in a particular way and say, I want to be part of that. So from a strategy standpoint, if we take that as a framework, as a quote unquote definition of where we're heading, that's kind of a great place to start. Now, let me also share something else out with you. I want to talk about the idea that there is something beyond sustainability, that there's an idea of vitality that our district and the clubs in our district ought to be thinking about as it goes around doing what we do. And so what do I mean by that? So I'm going to just kind of frame it this way. There's a continuum in how we operate. And if you look across our entire district, clubs are at a different place. Some clubs are in massively organized, focused, strategic frameworks, and other clubs are trying to figure it out. And so let me just pose this continuum to see where you all think you fit. And I'm not going to ask you, because I'm going to keep this dialogue moving, but I want you to think in your mind where your club fits, and then it's a dialogue that can continue after this conversation. The first one is this: that you're viable, that you're functional, you're day-to-day operational, but you really are unable to adapt because you're just getting by. You're making the day-to-day needs happen, but you're scrapping, and you're trying to figure out some things, whether your club's in a change mode or whatever, but that's where you sit. So viability, there's nothing wrong with this, but it's where clubs can sit. The second area is sustainability. It means that this kind of a club is meeting current needs and can deliver on the mission of Rotary, but there's something going on where you're under-resourced and you have an inability to adapt and change to the market and to conditions around you, which means you can't do a lot more than what you're doing, which means you're sustainable, you're doing everything that you need to be doing. But the question that I ask for both of these types of clubs is this how you want to play going forward? This is where strategy comes into place, because the third piece of the continuum is something called vitality, or a vital club, which means they've got access to resources, they're reinvesting in the community, and they're maximizing their public value, which means they're reinvesting year over year over year, and they're growing their capacity to engage in the marketplace in a powerful way. So none of these are wrong. It's where we are. I mean, it's the truth. It's where we are, right? So here's the question on the table when it comes to strategy. And that is this question: do our clubs need a chiropractic adjustment? There are certain clubs that are aligned and in alignment, doing everything they need to be doing, but there are some clubs that are just not quite there, and we need to be thinking about this. And that's where strategy can play a very important role. When it comes to strategy, you build a strategic plan and you want to create organizational vitality, and all of that feeds into an operational playing field that's robust and exciting and fun and energetic, and people want to be a part of it. Because if that happens, what's the strategic result? It's increased membership, it's increased donations, it's increased access to service in the community, and overall it's increased engagement across the board. That's a very powerful place to be. But if we're not taking a deep look at ourselves from a strategy standpoint, we're missing an opportunity to really make a difference. Because again, I'll go back to it. I know for a fact, because and we all know this, when we write it down, it's more apt to happen. And so when I look at when I look at a SWOT analysis, we all know what a SWOT analysis is, right? reevaluating how effective our clubs in impacting the community and raising brand awareness, because that's why we're here. We're here from a communications perspective to change that best kept secret idea, right? And so SWOT analyses can be very, very powerful because they hold up the mirror to our clubs and allow us to answer what's really working, what is not working, what are our opportunities, and what are the things that can take us down and put us to pasture. And we've had clubs in our district that have gone away. In fact, I can't remember who I was talking with, one of the other assistant governors saying there's a club in our district that may be, disappearing. These are things that, I mean, listen, it happens, but we need to understand why, number one, and number two, we need to begin getting strategic in terms of these kinds of things. So we need to understand where our club strengths and weaknesses are, and we need to help define the strategy so that from a market and communications perspective, we can begin to develop ways in which to enhance all of the things that we do. So with that in mind, the SWOT analysis is powerful, and I'm just throwing some ideas on there that may resonate with your clubs, but I urge you all to go through this exercise with your club at some point, because it's a powerful wake-up call to where you are. And I will tell you, having done a lot of these, the best thing from my perspective, if you look at the opportunity section down here, the opportunity section are all, well, actually, I'll do it this way. Weaknesses are opportunities waiting to happen, and opportunities are where we build success. So if we can find the opportunities that can help us frame where we're heading, and we can build our goals and objectives from that vantage point, we can create more strengths and we can eliminate our weaknesses and really do some great things. So with that said, let's jump into tonight's dialogue, which is all about developing the club communications plan. But I wanted to frame this opening with strategy because this is all about strategy. So as Trish said, this is a very technical conversation we're gonna have tonight. And yes, we're taping it. So to understand that you don't have to take notes. I want you to really think about what we're walking into. And the reason why is because you can go back to this and listen to it again and again and again as we move through this, and really take advantage of how you might take this information and use it with your club to move it forward. You may not take it all, but I want to give you a roadmap to success from our vantage point. So the first thing is this. I'm going to give you 10 things, right? This is item number one. Item number one is quite simple. It's about developing that team. We've talked about this before. We've talked about the idea that if we don't have a team together inside our club that's focused on the idea that marketing and communications is the central framework of supporting community service, membership, giving, our brand, how the community engages with us, it's very, very powerful. As you heard from Jonathan in terms of how we deal with social and marketing from that vantage point, as you heard from Andy, as it relates to content and messaging, now we're bringing it all together in terms of how we go about telling the story. And we can't do it without a dialogue and without a collaborative conversation and transparent conversation on a club level. So I want to walk through what this means. So item number one, point number one, is creating the club marketing and communications team. And every club should have a chair of this committee, and this chair should be listed in DACDB so that we know who you are, because we're going to engage as we move forward. We're going to engage a dialogue that brings the chairs together in a very strategic conversation to create this ongoing idea. Now, the communications chairs, their main responsibility is kind of like the rudder on a ship to guide the process. Yeah, they could get their hands wet and dig into projects, but their responsibility is to make sure from a leadership standpoint with the senior leadership of your club and the president and the president-elect and the foundation chair and the membership chair and the community service chair, is to make sure everything is together and that all of the pieces of the marketing activities are moving forward. Then there is the email marketing person. And this doesn't have to be one person, it can be multiple people, but they are responsible for managing all email activity for the club and the management of all new contacts in the club, which means gathering all contact information, because we've talked about this before. We need to gather that, right? So that's important. The third role is social media marketing. This is so important. A lot of us were down at the Polio Plus, oh, actually not Polio Plus, at the UN Day this past Saturday with DG Jack and a bunch of other people, DG N Jeffrey and DG Ron. We were all down there doing our thing. It was great. And with Rick Benson was there and many others. But there was a lot of social media going on because we were all shooting pictures and sending it across the web, and you probably saw some of this stuff. But that's important, and we need to have somebody responsible for directing the entire club to doing that effort. And then, of course, you have partnership marketing. And I can't tell you how important this is because this person is responsible for directing and facilitating community relationships. And the whole idea is to build connections with the community from a business, government, and civic standpoint, and to really create a focus on increasing the community's engagement with the club, both from a philanthropic standpoint and a community service standpoint. And this can be highly powerful. And this is where you can get a lot of your business members keyed in as well, and your sponsorships. And then you've got photography and videography. Kyle Clark is sitting out there. He's been espousing our videography and photography stuff for months. And having someone in your club who's responsible for executing, archiving, and collecting the photos and videos that you get, and organizing in the digital assets in a way where the club can get to it, that's powerful. And I'm going to talk a little later about something we've done. I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag yet, but we want to create a way to make it easy for you to get those assets. So, but that's important. And then another one is public and media relationships, creating press releases and media releases and story pitches and ways in which we can get media outlets across the state connected to what we're doing. So you got to have somebody involved in that. And then the last one is the website. So Ron Webb loves this one because it's all about the idea of getting people engaged in looking at our websites, taking a look at how they are and whether they're strong and whether they're making an impact in what we're doing. And I will tell you that we all know the clubs in our own clubs, whether our websites are doing the job and whether we have to do more to make them powerfully connected to what we're doing. And the whole synergy of the website with the electronic media, with the digital media, with the other things that we do, that's important. So does that all make sense? I hope that you're nodding your head and it makes sense. So that's there for you, and you can go back to this and we can get you that documented. But here's the thing. This is Mark, our president, Mark, our Maloney, who's the president of Rotary International. We're thrilled to have him as part of this whole framework. The idea here is that he's sitting in front of the vision statement of Rotary International. Now, this came out a couple of years ago and has been a powerful position for all of us to sit behind, right? Because it really says it all. And what that kind of opens up for me is that we need to begin setting club communication goals and objectives. And I don't mean just short, on a summary level. We need to be thinking about this on a long-term and short-term basis from a club perspective. We all know what our club's purpose is, right? Because it ties directly to what Rotary International is about. But if we have good club goals, and particularly short-term goals for the year or long-term goals from a 3 to 5 year standpoint, we're actually being very smart. And I'm being a little punny, but SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. I want to talk about that. But an example of a good short-term goal would be to increase the number of new members in a club by a net of 5 by June 30th, 2020. You can see how specific that is, how measurable that is. It's achievable, it's realistic, and it's time-bound. An example of a bad short-term goal is to do better with increasing new members, because I have no idea what that means. So you want to be specific. So here's a kind of a very, very quick picture of specificity, making your goal very precise, measurability, making your goal one that can be measured with numbers to see if you have hit it, making achievability, making your goal something that you feel you can realistically accomplish. Of course, realistic is the next one, which is making sure that there's a realm of possibility that you can do that, and then putting a time limit on it. Now, when it comes to strategy and goals and objectives, I've got a long breadth of history doing this for nonprofits. And one of the things that I know is if you don't write it down, as I said before, it's never going to happen. So I am providing you handout number 1. Now, you don't have to download these now. Don't go to it now. I want you to focus on the webinar. They're all sitting there. We're going to leave the webinar up at the end to make sure you can all download these. But this is a template, and I'm giving it to you in PDF format and in Word format. So you literally can go down and put down the goal, which is a two statement, to increase our membership by 10% by June of 2020. So if my club is 25, I'm going to bring in 3 new members by 2020. So that's the goal, but the objective might be, so each goal may have multiple objectives. So an objective might be to hold a series of new member programs that will bring in individuals that we feel potentially could be members of our club. And then from that, so that's objective A. And then in objective A, I might have a couple of strategies and tactics, like strategy tactic number 1, create an event at the local brewery that will bring in at least 10 prospective members, and let's have a fun evening of fellowship. And then when is that going to happen, and who's involved in that? And then strategy number 2 on that might be join a Rotary Builds Business event and bring at least 5 Rotarians from our club with 5 new members to this event, and have them understand that we are all about business connections. You see what's happening here? And then objective number 2 might be another thing, and then you're going to have multiple strategies and tactics, and then when and who. So that's how that operates. Now, I know I'm not speaking to anybody that doesn't understand this, but again, it goes back to the idea that if we don't write it down, we got a problem. So that's item number 2. All right, we're going to move on to item number 3. Item number 3 is really quite simple. It's about people. It's about different kinds of people. It's about people we don't know. It's about people that we know. It's about people, it's about gender. It's about different segments of our community that we want to connect into. Yes, it's all about identifying and prioritizing our audience. So who are we trying to reach? Well, we can reach all sorts of people, but we need to have a set of primary and secondary audience members that we're keyed into. So I've just outlined a few, primary audiences like Rotarians and families of Rotarians, community participants in other club service projects. So people that participate in the service projects we do, they're primary audience members to come to and be part of Rotary. Community participants in our fundraisers, parents of youth award recipients, community leaders. You get the whole picture here. And then the secondary audiences, business owners or other, and obviously some of these secondary audiences for you all might be primary audiences. So this is where you need to sit down and tell your story, right? Now, I want to step back a little bit because this just happened and I love this. So I just got a note from a parent of a Student of the Year recipient from the Madison Rotary Club. I've not shared it with my club yet, so I'm sharing it with them on Thursday. But I'm really excited about this because it blew me away. So I'm going to share it with you. For months, I've been meaning to write a thank you note to you and the Rotary Club, and I'm embarrassed that I haven't done so yet. The Student of the Year breakfast was such an incredible event and by far the proudest moment to date for Patrick and for our family. On days when it feels like Kevin and I might be messing up this parenting gig, stressing the wrong things, overthinking it all, I remind myself, hey, he was Student of the Year. He's a kind boy and it was noticed and then recognized by your incredible club. We will be forever grateful to you for that. And I got to tell you, I'm sitting here getting goosebumps just reading it. This is the essence of why we do what we do, right? I mean, I hope that this is all kind of resonating for everyone on this call, right? So what's great about this is it's powerful. And it opened up a door. I was sitting on the phone with Jonathan Zaromsky last night, and we both said to ourselves, why don't we have a testimonial page on our district website or on our club's website to talk about testimonials of people that are not Rotarians and how it's impacted them and their community. I mean, that just makes so much sense. And why don't we have videos of parents or other people that we've impacted talking about how Rotary's impacted them alongside our Rotary Minutes? The power of that is just uncanny, right? But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there are people like this that are slipping through our fingers. And if we don't identify and prioritize these audiences and reach out to them and invite them into our clubs, and we forget about them, we're missing the boat. It's sand slipping through our fingers. So that's real powerful. And then, of course, I'm going to talk marketing-wise. This is all, marketing 101, but I want to give you scope because PRISM, for those of you who don't know PRISM by Claritas, is a way in which it's broken down into 14 different groups and 66 different market segments of psychographic pictures of people, whether it's urban, uptown, midtown, mix. I mean, for us in Connecticut, it's the inner suburbs, it's middle burbs, it's middle America, it's rustic living, it's landed gentry, right? It's all of these things, right? But what are these things made up of? There are 66 clusters of people, and it's all psychographics. And you can go online and literally go to Prism and put in your zip code. It will tell you who's in your community, which one of these 66 are very affluent in your community, and to see what these people are. These are them. You know, whether it's the Cosmopolitan or Country Casuals or Young and Rustic or whatever. These are all fantastic. And I'm not suggesting you dive into this, but I wanted to give you a scope of this because it's important, and that's what it is there, and it's part of the puzzle. So, and then lastly, I want to take a second here because this is just so interesting, and I'm not expecting any of you all to do this unless it really inspires you. But for those of you who know what personas are, I want to take a second and talk about a persona. A persona is basically a segment of your market. We've already talked about them. An audience segment can be framed in a persona. And a persona is a realistic representation of your audience segment. And what it does is it describes real people with backgrounds, goals, and values. So what you're looking at is you're looking at a person who's a young community professional. Now, we're all after these young people, right? Because that's one of the big challenges that we have. You know, we're trying to get, the reason why Mark Maloney is all focused on Rotaract is because he knows if we connect Mark, and also last year's president, we connect Rotaract and make them official, because that just happened. Rotaract has now officially become a Rotary thing. It's even more so than ever before. We know that those young people are the future of Rotary. And if we don't get them engaged now, we're missing an opportunity. So these Rotary personas can be very powerful if we start describing who they are and what they are, and we start kind of shifting our club strategies around these people. Trish, what's Drew's last name? I'm blanking on it. Do you recall?
Drew Kessler.
Yeah, Drew Kessler. So Drew Kessler was a fantastic about this. For those of you who remember Drew speaking at a number of our events, he talks about, he was up at Pets, I know that because I saw him there. He talks about how he went in with his whole family and he changed the whole culture of his club. These are the kind of things we need to begin thinking about, right? But if we don't write down the strategy, we'll never approach that idea. So here's one example of a young community professional. Here's another one. And by the way, before I jump away from this gal, you can see her goals. You can see her personality and her bio. You can see her frustrations and fears. You can see what motivates her, what her preferred channels are, and where she is in life, and what her personality is like. These are all things that you're going to define based on not only what I call a proto persona, which is your thumbnail picture of it, but then going out and talking to the community that fits this. Like there might be someone in your community that really fits this, sitting down with them face to face in a focus group or a few of them and having this conversation and framing it is very, very powerful, because then you have a dialogue that can be effectively impacting how your club is gearing itself towards these communities. So that's one. Another one is couple cruise into retirement. You know, a lot of us are in that mode, right? And then the last one is family man in the prime of his life. Now I've loaded these down into that upload scenario. So you're gonna get these things, you can look at them. And I built these in a program called Extensio.com, which is listed at the top of Rotary Persona number 3. Just go to Extensio.com and you can play around it. It does have a cost to it. It's not that expensive, and you don't have to use it, but I just want to kind of give you a framework of what these are and how powerful these are. So let's move on. All right, so this next one is messaging. So listen, this is Bill Gates talking about how close we are to ending polio now. And of course, we just had World Polio Day a few weeks back, and we're about to go into Arlo Guthrie and the concert that's sold out at the Milford Performing Arts Center the end of next week on the 22nd, and it's going to be just a wonderful time. But it's all about messaging, right? This is a message that Rotary framed, and so I urge you all. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because Andy did a fantastic job last session, really focusing on club content and messaging, and I want you to do that. But I want to frame a couple of things on the heels of this. Definitely go. You can go on the district website and take a look at that video and revisit it. But what are the key questions you want to ask as you build your messaging? Well, the first one is, what issues are most important to each of those target audiences. Instead of looking at from your vantage point, look at your audience and think from their vantage point. Put yourself in their shoes. What is important to them? What are some of the frequently asked questions your stakeholders have? And what does your target audience need to understand that they don't understand about Rotary? And what actions should you take in that area, and how should these stakeholders respond to your messaging? What would you like them to respond? Which is, i.e., join, number one, and number two, give money, right? So these are things to start thinking about. And again, go back to Andy's webinar, because it's very, very powerful when he talks about the antagonist and the protagonist and the story we want to tell around framing our actions around our message. So with that said, let's move into item number 5, which is all about technology. Well, why is it technology? Because it's all about implementing a club database. We need to I cannot tell you how important this is. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because we've espoused it, but this is item number 5 on the roadmap, which is select, implement a club database and a CRM, whatever you want to call it. And you can see the one that we have here. This is DACDB, and actually my wife's name is in there, Maribel Carmen Friend. She's a potential member. She's actually a friend of the Madison Rotary Club. We have a friend program. But the point is that you can take every prospect you have and put it in a DACDB. I'm sure you can do it in a Club Runner, or you can do it in an Excel spreadsheet, but by gosh, do it. Because every time you touch somebody and meet somebody for the first time, or someone comes to your event, if you don't put them in your database, you lose them forever. Enough said. Let's move on to item number 6, which is prioritize your club communications methods and tools. So Mark Maloney talks about Rotary connects the world, right? That's what we're about. Well, we can't connect the world without our tools and our methodologies, right? So this is, I'm being a little punny again, because I'm not sure that's what he meant when he made that thematic statement, because he doesn't. He means he means more personally, more relationship based, which is what it's all about, right? But we have to bring technology into it. We need to bring methodology into it, because those are the tools that help us achieve what we need to achieve. So what do I mean by that? It's all about saying, okay, we're going to focus on written, spoken, and electronic interactions, and we're going to pick 4 main methods of communication. So here's a couple of columns of written and oral communication methodologies that you can take on. The written, whether it's printed publications, flyers, newsletters, email marketing, social media, surveys, etc., or oral, speeches, club meetings, community service events, fundraisers, fellowship, online meetings like we're doing now, things of this nature. So this is all very, very important, but you need to begin looking at that. And then, of course, when it comes to the methodology, you know, what are the tools that are out there to allow us to do this? Well, there's so many tools out there to allow us to do what we do. I mean, a few weeks back, Kyle was talking about video producing software. He uses Premiere. I use a Final Cut, and there's iMovie. But those are 3 that are out there that can be used. Podcasting software. You know, I could go on and on here. This will be sitting in front of you as you re-review this particular conversation. But I wanted to kind of throw this in there because it's an important mix. So that's item number 6. So let's move on to item number 7. And that is, well, the materials that we create, right? Whether it's a display banner, whether it's a business card, be my guest for lunch, whether it's a brochure or a flyer, whatever it is, we are people in action, and we need to have a way to leave something behind for our community. And if we don't have this strategically set up in our clubs, we're missing an opportunity. So here we go. Here's an example of a collateral, a set of collaterals and programs that a Rotary Club might do for the year. And here's handout number 3. Here's an example of a matrix. I just created it in Excel, and I'm going to give it to you. And you can take what's here, or you can add things to it, or replace whatever. But you can see it's the name of the project, the target audience, the key marketing objectives, the format, the output, the quantity, the communications channel, who's owning it, and then the start and the end date, the range of dates it's going to hit, and any notes related to them. Pretty straightforward. And I have a bunch of things here. I've got a weekly newsletter, a club brochure. I've got the sponsor banner. I've got business cards for meeting, inviting people to lunch. I've got my weekly email, and I have my weekly social meeting post because, listen, we have to be playing from that vantage point. I know there are a lot of clubs out there that use social media, but wouldn't it be great to have a social meeting post that posted who came to our club meeting today, and a post and maybe even a video on there. I mean, every time I go to a club meeting, I videotape my club meeting, or I videotape pieces of it, and I send that off to our club president, who then uses it in the newsletter and social media work. So that's an example. And then, of course, number 8. So now we're on to number 8. Create the club communications budget. So let's not forget that we've been living in a world in Rotary where the budget for marketing and communications has been goose egg. And I will tell you, this has got to change, because there are costs associated with things, and we can't be afraid to spend money on the things that are going to make a difference in making awareness of what our club does in the community. Yes, we can have Rotarians in our clubs that are printers, that facilitate this and provide it pro bono. Wow, if we have that, let's leverage that. But we don't always have that. And so we should put aside, and my rule of thumb is approximately 10% of the budget, or 5 to 10% of the budget for that purpose. And you're gonna have to play that zero-based budgeting concept as you go into it. But here's a budget program that I am giving you. And it's a gem in the rough for you, because I'm giving you 2 versions. I'm giving you a Word version or PDF version, and I'm giving you an Excel version. The Excel version will automatically, as you fill in the pieces of the Excel sheet, it will create the total of your budget at the top. So I'm going to give this to you, and you can use it in any way you want. But then what does it feed into? It feeds into a matrix that allows you to look at your total marketing budget based on scope, size, and every aspect of it, so that when it comes down to when you're sitting down with your club president, your president-elect in February, March, and April, this is something you're working with them on, setting up the club budget when it comes to marketing and communications, so that they can begin seeing how it impacts the bottom line. And then, of course, then the impact means that that information is sitting in your budget for the year. Make sense? Okay, moving on. We're up to the last 2, number 9. Number 9 is create the critical path and calendar. It means taking everything that we've talked about thus far and putting it in a mode where we can understand where it fits in our day-to-day timetable. It means we need to understand what the project is, what the marketing and communications item description is, what our target audience is, what our primary message is for that piece, what our call to action is, what our quantity to produce is, what the projected cost is, what channel we're using to distribute all of this activity around, what type of communication is, and then the execution timetable. When's the copy due? When is it approved? When does it go to the designer or the facilitator? When does it go to the printer if it's applicable? When is the output complete? When is the distribution preparation period? When is the distribution complete and it's done? But having all this is important. And here's an example, and it's a little scary, of a matrix, and you're gonna get a copy of this too, which details every piece of this out. And to make it a little less scary, and you can look at this, you can see how detailed this is in terms of all the pieces of the puzzle. If we go out to this and go to the next page, here's our critical path timeline. Now, I chose to do the critical path timeline in the form of a Gantt chart. A Gantt chart is basically the ability to look at it across a timetable. I provided you this Gantt chart starting in January of 2020, going all the way through till June 30th of 2021, an 18-month Gantt chart. All right, so you're gonna have that. And so what I'm gonna recommend to you, this is gonna be one of my action items to everyone. Go back to your club and begin planning your calendar for the second half of this Rotary year, starting in January of 2020. In the next 6 weeks, see if you can frame something out. If you can't, you can't. But if you can, it's a great kind of way of engaging this process and getting it going. Then starting in February with your president-elect, as he or she comes back from PETS, you can begin talking about what does 2021 look like. But this is a great tool. And so that's item number 9. And now we move into the last item. Item number 10, review and evaluate every communication activity for return on investment impact. i.e., here's the thing. We need to know what worked and what didn't work. How many Rotarians participated in everything that we did? How many non-Rotarians have participated? How many new members did we obtain? How many new donors did we obtain? How much new revenue did we generate from dues and contributions? What was the cost of getting that new member? What was the cost of getting that revenue that we generated? What was the dollar generated per dollar spent? What was the operational success? What worked, what didn't work? What was the overall impact based on the time spent to get that return? And what percent of the Rotarians from the club actively participated in the operation of the event? You know, the old adage, 10% of the people do 90% of the work, right? We need to start looking at that. And I know we all feel it sometimes, and this is when we go back to that continuum conversation at the front of the session, where we got to ask ourselves what's working and what's not working, and how we get to that viability point, right? That vitality point. So just to make it even more complex, because this is just who I am, I've created a cost-benefit analytic. Now, this is not rocket science. I want to tell you. You can see all these pieces here. They're all right there. That was what was on that budget matrix. So everything that was on that budget matrix I showed you earlier is now sitting along this column. And here, number of distributors is the same thing. But then I projected a percent response. How many respondees responded and how many participants participated in Rotary in some way during your Rotary year based on that item. And then how many new members did that item generate? How many new donors did that item generate? What was the total dues revenue, the gift revenue, based on an average of $160 in dues and a $100 average gift? What was the total revenue returned? Then what was the total cost of each of those pieces, which we have, right? And then what was the cost of that? What was the percentage of each of these from a cost standpoint to add up to 100%? You can see that the Lobster Fest flyer took up 35% of our total budget for the year, right? That's okay, because it's generating 8 new members and 6 new donors. Pretty powerful. And then we can go even further into cost of new member and net revenue, cost of revenue, and dollar generated per dollar spent. I don't want you to become overwhelmed by this, but I've got to tell you that this is an important idea that you ought to be thinking about. And I'm not suggesting you need to do it, but it's out there. And it's one of those bite-sized pieces that Trish was talking about that you can put your arms around or not, but it's on the table. So here's what we just did, everyone. We just walked through each of these. Create the club marketing communications team. Set the club communications goals and objectives. Identify and prioritize your audience. Prioritize and prepare the club messaging and content strategy. Select and implement a club database to collect that information. Identify and prioritize club communication methods and tools. Identify and prepare club marketing programs materials. Create the budget to support all of those things. Create a club communication calendar and critical path. And then review and evaluate everything that you do so that you can do better the next time. And so I'm going to give you some bonus things before we jump into our last exercise for this session. The bonus things are as follows. Number 1, the Rotary Club Marketing Plan. I have given you a document you can download that gives you this entire thing. This is download item number 10. And if you wanted to do all of this, you can. What I've shown you today is really emphasized in the direct marketing strategies and the social media advertising and the projections and evaluations, a little bit of description of club organization goals and objectives, a little bit of situation analysis, and a little bit of market analysis, a little bit of customer profile, but not all of it. Now, every club has somebody that's got, like me, that has a deep love for what we're looking at. There's nothing wrong with getting that person engaged in this conversation. You know, it all goes back to club visioning, which some of us remember, right? So I've been through that. In fact, my year as president, we did it. It was fantastic. And so I love this, and it's there for you to take if you want it. Now, here's a bonus thing. I told you at the beginning, there's something I wanted to share with you about something that we've all been doing. And that is we've created a YouTube channel called District 7980, Rotary District 7980. And yes, there are 21 Rotary minutes sitting there for you to download. You can subscribe to it. And we're going to be adding things to it, videos to it on an ongoing basis. Kyle Clark is the manager of this area. I'm involved in it as well, but Kyle is going to continue to upload stuff in there. And at some point, we're going to open it up to other members of the district so that they can upload their own stuff. In fact, Kyle, I think that can happen now, right? If you unmute yourself. Well, Kyle's not unmuting himself. So, but the point is that that's available too. So we'll get that. So that's bonus number 2. Bonus number 3 is a planning guide. Now, this is what Trish was talking about. This document, which is available for you to download, has everything for you to begin setting the stage for understanding and setting goals for your club and then moving that into myrotary.com. We should not be in this district without having every Rotary Club in this district fully vetted in terms of what it's going to do. Can you imagine if every club did this and leadership knew what the goals and objectives were, and now we could talk efficiently with every club about where they are, what's stopping them from getting there, and help each other move across the finish line? That is powerful. So that's my conversation. But before we go, we have something very special. I want to introduce Andy Marlatt, who you met last time at the content and messaging webinar a couple weeks back. And he's going to have a conversation with Cheryl Alice Dewey, who is the co-president of the Middletown Rotary Club. And we've brought Cheryl Alice with us because Jonathan Zaromsky, who is in the Middletown Club, shared with us that there's some interesting things going on at the club, and we thought we'd end this with a case study. So Andy, I'm going to hand this to you and Jonathan and Cheryl.
Hey guys. Thanks, Robert. So over the last several months and over the last several weeks as well, the marketing committee team has, as you know, we went around, we did a lot of talking. We explained a lot of things, and I'm not sure how much of that got across. I know some of it's kind of scary. And so one day I was asking Jonathan about Middletown and how things were going there, and what they had been able to do, since Jonathan's on our committee and is a very, very capable tech savvy guy. Where did the club stand? So I asked him about that, and he agreed to have, Cheryl agreed to come on to talk about it. So Cheryl, if you wouldn't mind, I kind of want to know where Middletown stands in terms of where you are when you look at all this communication stuff that we're talking about, and where is Middletown right now? Where was it, let's say, a year ago?
Well, we were very fortunate a year ago that we had a Rotarian who was really dedicated to our website, and Gary Gamold is his name. And, he basically handled everything for us, and we got a little spoiled. So, we were using, what was it?
Steve Lovelace is also on the call, and he's in our club who's took care of the transition from.
We were using Club Wizard, I think, right?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. This is Steve. I'm working from a computer that has a disabled video screen, but hopefully you can all hear me. We were using Club Wizard for many, many, many years.
Right, and it had its challenges, but whenever we had a question or a problem, it was nothing that Gary couldn't fix and handle.
Right.
And, he gave individual training to every president that came on, and it was helpful. But I think for some of us it was complicated. But in the back of our minds, we knew that whatever came up, Gary would be able to handle it. For example, at home, I have Apple products. I have a MacBook Air and an iPad, and an iPhone. And when I would put together a notice for club membership or the board membership or whatever, it didn't translate well into that platform. But I could call Gary, and he would magically, put it out in a format that worked. But it wasn't the best, and we knew that. Fortunately, we have Jonathan and Steve, who are so tech savvy, and they're such dedicated Rotarians, and they spend a lot of time on this stuff for us.
Steve really spent the time on it. I'm really going to be there for the next steps moving forward to help with the club. But Steve was really the spear on this one for sure.
And I have to say, as someone who has written both district and international grants, that I haven't always found the system to be that intuitive or user friendly. So I'm really glad that we have newer, younger people coming along that are able to step up and take responsibility for these kinds of things, because not only is it applicable to our day-to-day work, but we worry about sustainability with Rotary, frankly. Retaining membership, growing membership, becoming relevant to younger people, and all kinds of things. And I can't do it. You know, I'm 63, and I don't know what I'd do without these guys.
And what's interesting is that's actually how I became a member. I didn't really know what Rotary was when I was looking into it. I just knew that I started a new business. I knew I needed a way to network, and I found out that, you know, Rotary was a way for me to network and help my business as well as give back to the community. But that's all I knew. So I Googled it, and I ended up on the Club Wizard website, and I direct messaged Dan Litwin, which is how I became a Rotarian. And he invited me to lunch, and then I kept going, and slowly I learned, and then eventually I became a member. And that's really how my demographic is. We find things out, you know, we go to it, but, you know, the review thing would be a good idea because that's also how we make decisions.
Well, in terms of, so obviously the website was a main concern for you guys, but then after that, you know, if you look beyond that, obviously when you have Jonathan on board, your social media presence is something that's important too. Was that around a year ago? Are you utilizing it much now?
Steve?
Well, I give you the short answer. Several years ago, as Cheryl mentioned, we had Club Wizard, and we all knew that its usefulness was starting to wind down. Gary was quasi-retired and kind of wanted to get out of handling the day-to-day. And we just knew that the platform itself was not going to be all that supportive, particularly for some of the more technical things we wanted to do, the robustness of social media in particular. So for us, we settled on Clubrunner, and whether it's Clubrunner or DAP for anybody who's not using either one, both of them are hands down much better than what we had been on Club Wizard. But we weren't doing really any. There was no social media. It was very old school. It was very traditional. It was, if you knew folks in the neighborhood and the business community, you'd invite them in. Like with most clubs, very close-knit community sort of thing. Didn't really have signature events that a lot of clubs have, Monster Fest and all that. It was a very organic, homegrown thing. So I started our Facebook page, got us on Twitter, got us to the Chamber of Commerce, built a YouTube channel, and then we produced a series of videos last year, interviews with different club members. We try to get a few of these tools so that if we do want to do anything, we've now got the tools in place. But for us, and I think as Cheryl had intimated, it's a two-phase sort of thing. First and foremost, beyond all the tactics, it's to redefine what Rotary Club should be in the mind of prospective members. We've got to define what that is from a brand standpoint. What do they think our brand is? And then from there, we can go in and take all the technical side of that and present it to them. But until we really determine what the shape and the face is of the club, the technical side isn't going to be as useful as it will be until we've done that evaluation.
Yeah.
We did do a Survey Monkey, was it the beginning? This was when Eric Rodko was still president. It was like halfway through the year.
Yeah. Eric was concerned about this too.
Yeah, they said they sent a Survey Monkey out about, there's a various questions about what they thought where the club is, what its weak points were, what its strengths were, how people felt about the lunches, the time of day that we were having them, just to get the general feedback. And from that, they started implementing, we are doing after hours, just casual, happy hours, social things,
Because we don't talk at our meetings as much, we listen to speakers and we have business to do. Yeah, that's worked out pretty well.
Yeah, and that's all about back to your the marketing committee, the fabulous. How do you become more irresistible?
Right. Irresistibility. I have a question, Cheryl. You said it early on, and I'm getting feedback. So I'm sorry the sound is not so good on this one, guys. So the question I have, Cheryl, is you mentioned that there's you felt that your viability, you could be stronger. Now that you're sitting where you're sitting now, I want to bring closure to this. What's different? What has gotten you to this place, and where are you heading?
Well, our board met last week, and after we closed our meeting, we probably had a 15, 20-minute, really good, robust conversation about, retention of membership and growing of membership. And I don't think we're alone in that. We've lost some members, and frankly, financially, we're struggling, and I don't think we're alone in that either. And to the extent that we can be relevant to younger members without disrespecting our history and our older members, I think that we have to rely on our technology. We have to have a good website. We have to have an interesting, exciting, easily accessible website. And so, it's just one facet of, many of the things that we need to do. I mean, I immediately texted some of the leaders in Rotary International and said, who's a subject matter expert about, retention and membership and growth and all of that? And they gave it to me, and that was Ron Holtz, I guess. Is that his name?
Yes.
Yeah, Holtz. And he immediately contacted me. And, I hope that we can engage him in helping us with not only technology, but other things, because we're full of good ideas. We're just not sure, corporate memberships, cutting down on attendance requirements, changing the way, our agendas work that are kind of traditionally Rotarian, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We really need to reach out to leaders nationally to help us deal with some of these things. But technology is a big piece of it.
Great. Andy, anything else?
No, I was just wondering, where you are now, and the next thing that you're going to look at doing. What's the next step for you guys? What do you see as, of everything you have to do, what's the most important thing you can do next?
Well, I would like to do some kind of a brainstorming strategic plan with our membership, but use someone at the district who's done this with other clubs. And if we don't have the expertise within the district, perhaps from Rotary International, because I know we're not alone. I know it's a big, big, big deal. But I would like someone to, coordinate, not a real big, time-consuming, huge issue, but maybe, a meeting or two where our members who care can get together with someone who knows to talk about some of the things that are available. I mean, we didn't even know about corporate memberships until a year ago.
Right.
And there are people who are saying we should be able to get together and order from a menu, and if some people don't want to eat lunch, then they don't pay anything. And these tend to be radical ideas. Well, they shouldn't be, So, I think that we'll, rather than just starting from scratch, we'll probably reach out and utilize some of the talent within Rotary District or International that can help us progress and move forward in a progressive way.
Cheryl, thank you so much. Andy, thank you. Jonathan, thank you. Steve, thank you. If you guys could mute yourselves just so we can, I just muted you. There we go. It's just so important that we hear what you said. And Trish and I and Jonathan and Kyle and Andy were talking earlier, and we wanted to bring this home at the end with the idea that we're all in this together, and we all have these issues. And what was on the table today was a roadmap. And as we talked about, you can do it in bite-sized pieces, but thinking outside of the box. Cheryl, what you just said is so critically important, the ability to think outside the box and not fall into the pattern of this is the way we've always done it. And that's the way we're going to continue to do it, right?
Without alienating, okay.
Say again?
But without alienating our valuable older members. I mean, that's a big part of it.
Absolutely. We've got to find a way to find the best pathway to those kinds of things. So listen.
Robert, could I say something here?
Yes, please, Trish, go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, can you tell the nice people what the roadmap is to find all this swell
Yeah, I
stuff?
was about to do that.
Okay, that's one. And two, I think that there's two approaches that you can take to building membership, getting more people at your events, raising more money. And one is, it was what I call the Kirby vacuum cleaner sales approach, which, my apologies to anybody out there who might have current or former Kirby vacuum salesman. But the idea that if you throw enough stuff against the wall, you just throw enough stuff against the wall and hope some of it sticks. If you can ask 25 people to be members, maybe you can get 5. And what we're espousing here and what we're encouraging here is a different approach, is where you need to analyze your audience and then target them. It's like, as you said, Robert, it's not rocket science, but it is a science. And if you just force yourself to sit down and take the time to do that, and just pick one aspect, whether it's membership or an event you're having, apply these tools to that one thing. But if you do that, you're going to come up, I think, with a lot more success. And finally, I think that it's quite clear from some of what I'm hearing is that we need to apply some of these tools at the district level. And we need to come up with our own little top-down strategy here to make sure that we are getting the word out to our folks. And I think, Cheryl, your testimony is wonderful, and you've done the most important thing, which you took the first step. And then, of course, you have Jonathan, so that doesn't hurt either.
Thank you, Trish. So let me now point you all.
I do want to say, Trish,
Go ahead.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is a big,
We agree with you. We agree with you.
we're going to make Rotary a household world if it kills us.
Yes. So listen, here's the deal. If you go under the group chat at the bottom of your screen and click on it, it will open up a listing and you will see 10 items you can download. I'm going to leave this window open. I'm not going to close the meeting. I'm just going to end the recording at the appropriate moment where we end this. And you can stay on here and download. I'm going to leave it up for like a half an hour. So just go ahead and do that.
What you want them to do is click on the little square thing that says file, right?
No, they just click on the document and download it.
Well, there's nothing there. I clicked on chat and I got Zoom group chat. I don't have any
No, is anybody having a problem seeing a listing of things there? You can raise your hands. Oh, we have a new message. Hold on a second. I do not see listing. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to email everybody on this call every item. All right? They're not big. I have your email addresses. I know who you are. And I'm going to email everyone. So I'm going to do it as soon as we finish here.
And then where are you going to put it after that?
After that, I'm going to give it to Ron Webb, who's going to post it on the district website.
Under what? Where do people go
Under the
website?
communications tools tab. Everyone will find it. It's where all the recordings are. So Ron, I know you're on this call, so we'll have that happen. But everyone's going to have access to this, so you get all the materials.
Okay.
And I want to thank you. We're a few minutes over. I appreciate your patience. Thank you so much. I'm still going to leave the site up if anybody does see it. But I look forward to connecting with all of you. And by the way, one last thing. This is our last session. We are thinking about planning a December 2nd open mic dialogue. That's Monday, December 2nd. That's the Monday after Thanksgiving. You'll get further notice about this in the next week or so. But please keep your avenues open for that, because Cheryl, we love what you have to say. And we want to open up more of a dialogue and begin getting more interaction, because this has all been us talking to you. But you have these recordings, and now it's time to have a more open dialogue. And we are all available. Kyle, Andy, Jonathan, myself, Trish, Ron, Michael Perry, and everyone else, Tom Lawrenson, everyone else is available to come on site and work with our club, with every club in the district, to help, continue the dialogue. So we're going to keep this thing moving. And in January, there'll be a new program to continue the dialogue. So thank you all. Oh, one last thing. We're going to send out on the heels of this, tomorrow morning, you're going to get a survey. We want your survey response. Last time we didn't get a lot of responses. We want responses back to give us a sense of how we're doing and any suggestions, because we're always learning and we appreciate whatever you can provide for feedback. So with that, I thank you. Have a great rest of your evening. See you later, everyone.